All right, y'all, welcome to Gale at Night. This Megan Thee Stallion defamation trial is getting heavier by the day, and the latest testimony coming out of that Miami federal courtroom is honestly heartbreaking, but also incredibly important. So let's break down what's happening. Megan Thee Stallion is in the middle of a federal defamation and cyberstalking trial against blogger Milagro Cooper. She's also known online as Milagro Grams. Megan is accusing her of helping run a targeted, coordinated campaign to harass her, intimidate her, and spread flat-out lies across social media. And a big part of this case centers around that AI-generated deepfake sexually explicit video of Megan that was pushed online. Now, we already knew this deepfake was damaging, but now we're hearing exactly how damaging. Megan's former manager, Travis Green, you all may know him as T. Ferris. He testified that when this video started circulating, Megan was so emotionally distraught that she ended up needing the intensive 4-week therapy program that cost $240,000. He described Megan walking into the room in tears, apologizing to him for having to see something she literally had nothing to do with. She wasn't at fault, she didn't create it, and she still felt responsible that people around her had to witness it. And this is what pushed her into that therapy program. Ferris also testified that this wasn't just a bad moment. This was part of a much bigger pattern. Along with the trauma of the 2020 shooting involving Tory Lanez, the nonstop online harassment, the smear campaigns, the trolling, and that deepfake video all added up to Megan being diagnosed with PTSD. Her treating psychologist, Dr. Lenore Walker, is expected to testify as well, explaining the full extent of that trauma. So this isn't just celebrity drama. This is a mental health crisis caused by a coordinated online attack. And speaking of damages, the financial fallout was huge too. Another witness, Daniel Kinney from Roc Nation, testified that Megan lost multiple major brand deals because of the toxic online narrative pushed about her. Brands like Activision Call of Duty and Google's Pixel backed away from collaborations, not because of anything Megan did, but because of the cloud of lies and harassment swirling around her name. Now let's talk about this blogger, Milagro Cooper, the defendant in this case. Under oath, she admitted she did in fact point her followers to the deepfake video. She tried to play it off like she was just commenting on a celebrity topic, but the lawsuit says this wasn't innocent commentary. It was a part of a coordinated smear campaign, and there may have been cooperations with Tory Lanez and even his father. And here's where it gets even more suspicious. Cooper admitted she received around $3,000 in payments from Tory Lanez's father, though she claims it was just for personal reasons or promotion, not for defaming Megan. But the timing and the content she was pushing online paint a very different picture. Remember, this is the same Tory Lanez who was convicted in 2022 for shooting Megan in the feet and is now serving a 10-year sentence. His appeal for that conviction was denied. And yes, he's still involved here too, during this defamation case. Tory and his attorney were held in contempt of court and fined $25,000 for refusing to answer questions during a deposition. Some of that deposition is expected to be shown to the jury. So when Megan talks about a coordinated campaign, she's talking about bloggers, social media personalities, fan accounts, and people in Tory's camp all pushing the same false narratives over and over to tear down her credibility and attack her mental health. This current trial is completely separate from the criminal case. This one is focused on the years-long smear campaign, the deepfake video, the cyber stalking, and the accusations that Megan lied, quote unquote, during the shooting trial. And after hearing these testimonies, it's clear that the damage wasn't just online. It was emotional, psychological, and financial. The trial is still ongoing and is expected to run into early December. And honestly, based on how much has already come out, I think even more shocking details are still on the way.
And is back in court, this time to testify against a blogger who she says has been harassing her for years since she was shot by fellow artist Tory Lanez. The rapper is suing influencer Milagro Grams, whose real name is Milagro Cooper, for defamation, emotional distress, and this last one here for circulating an explicit deepfake video of her online. Meg Thee Stallion, whose real name is Megan Pete, took jurors back to the day of that July 2020 shooting. Lanez, whose real name is Daystar Peterson, was found guilty of shooting her in the foot and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Joining us now is legal affairs journalist Megan Cuniff. She's been following this trial incredibly closely, and she was in court today. Megan, what did we hear from Megan Thee Stallion in court, and what did you see in terms of just general feel of that hearing and her demeanor?
Yeah, we heard testimony about what it's been like sitting in the courtroom and hearing these vitriolic rants about her, and what it was like to sit there when jurors were shown a really horrible sexually explicit video of her that of course is not actually her, but it was a digital alteration to make it look like her. And that's a key part of the case. And there really was just, I think, a tone of everyone kind of hanging on her every word, which is kind of how it goes in a trial when a witness testifies. But she had a real presence in the courtroom, and the jury was definitely, captivated and really interested to hear from her finally after days of testimony and hearing about these things that had happened to her.
A lot of people following this closely online have talked about the bombshells that have sort of surfaced throughout this trial. Could you take us through those? What has stood out to you as something that maybe was unexpected that happened in court, or just a nugget of information you got that hadn't been released publicly prior to this?
Yeah, I think this morning was really a dramatic moment when a man who used to work as a moderator for Milagro in her online streams, which is really common because there's so much traffic and so much chatter going on, that you'll have somebody else who takes care of that and works really closely with the person who's doing the show. And this was about how he quit and really had a parting of ways with her over the tone and direction of things. And he started weeping when he talked about just how vitriolic things were. He talked about how people were threatening to commit suicide, and he broke down and he really started sobbing. Sometimes in court we'll see people get emotional and they're able to keep their composure and keep going, but he actually turned and had his back to the gallery and sobbed as the judge called an abrupt 5-minute recess. So I'd say that was the most dramatic moment. It's of course debatable what was the most important, but there's been a lot of testimony about, I think, a lot of stuff that's already been in the record, but this morning was quite a moment.
We often hear when people talk about defamation cases or libel cases that the burden of proof can be so high. Is that the case here, or is there a good shot that the prosecution could come out on top?
Yes, I mean, of course, the big thing is showing actual malice here. And another claim is that she intentionally inflicted emotional distress by working with Tory Lanez, the rapper who's in prison for shooting Megan. And so malice is kind of baked into the case in all the claims. And it will be a real test of the new Florida law, too, the promotion of the digitally altered image, because that could set up an appeal later on. But right now, I think the jury is really just focused on the testimony that they're hearing, and they're hearing quite a reiteration of the trial and the shooting that happened. And it's, of course, Megan's lawyers' attempts to show that Lanez is guilty and that Milagro doesn't really have much to go with on the claims that she's making against Megan.
I mean, given that Florida has some new laws that could be at play here, is there any sort of recent criminal case that we could look at to say maybe there's some sort of precedent?
I'm not. It's always hard to make definitive statements about whether there's ever been a test of that law. But with it just being enacted in January 2024, I'm not sure if there's been a criminal case. But definitely, given the stakes on this and the public interest in this, I could see this being an appellate issue and something that could decide this. But it's, of course, just going to depend on what the jury does. And right now, there's still so much testimony to go through.
Do you think that Meg is just trying to avoid accountability and trying to silence the truth being told about her, which is causing the emotional distress? Or do you really think she is a victim of defamation and cyberbullying? I don't know if Meg is avoiding accountability or just exhausted from the cyber dragging Olympics the internet keeps hosting, but if she could file a motion today, she'd be requesting a full body expungement of this whole mess, sealed, shredded, and deleted from the cloud. So what do y'all think? Drop your comments down below. This is Gail at Night. See y'all on the next one. This is Gail at Night. Thank you all for watching, and thank you for supporting. Be sure to click the like button and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and set the bell to all.